Hello, everyone, and welcome. This evening's class is being sponsored by the Arc of Quad Cities. My name is Mary Heil, and I'll be the coordinator for this evening. This evening's class is Special Needs Trusts versus ABLE. Our presenters this evening will be Marianne Ellert, President and Founder of Protected Tomorrows, and JJ Hanley, Director for the Illinois ABLE. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to review. Access to this presentation will be locked 5 minutes into it, and you will not be able to reconnect once you are disconnected. The class is being recorded, and you will be able to view it once it has been placed on our website. If you could turn all your cameras and your microphones off now, I would greatly appreciate it. And I'd like to bring your attention to the bottom of your Zoom window. If you have questions during the class, click on the chat balloon and enter your questions in the dialog box located in the lower right corner of the screen and press enter. We will answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. And now I'd like to introduce Marianne Ellert.
Hello, everyone. And we are really glad to be here representing the Arc of Quad Cities. And welcome all of you who could join us tonight. And if you're not here, but you're going to listen to the recording, we welcome you as well. And I'm really happy to have JJ Hanley with us as our guest. She's going to cover a lot of the presentation because we're going to be talking a lot about ABLE. And a lot of you have probably heard some of our special needs trusts. So I'm going to go through the basics of special needs trusts and how they work, some of the things you need to know, and then we're going to talk about ABLE and then how they fit together. So basically, this is not a class on exactly how to do the trust. It's not a class on exactly what to do with ABLE, right? You have to, but it tells you how to use them. So the first thing we're going to do is just, what is a special needs trust? What is it? And then we're going to, then JJ is going to talk about what is the ABLE, and then we're going to talk about fitting them together. People, it's so confusing because now, 30 years ago, we didn't have any tools, 32 years ago. Then all of a sudden, about 29, 30 years ago, the special needs trust came around. And then, what is it, how old is the ABLE now, JJ? About?
It's been around about 6 years. Our plan's been available in live for about 4.5 years.
So here we are, new. 4.5 years with a new tool. Mm-hmm. And the biggest question we have is, I'm so confused. What should I use when? How do I use it? So that's what we're going to cover tonight. We get so many of those questions. And then how, when, and how do you track how you use them? Okay. So let's get started. One of the things we know and get asked all the time is, well, how much money is my child going to need? How much do they need now? How much should I set it aside? How much are they going to need to the future? And I get asked that question. And I used to 30 years ago say, well, it's a big stack of money because I never knew really how to help people quantify what it is. If they had a child going to Harvard and the child was 2, I could do a calculation and say, yep, this is how much you should be setting aside. Well, we have a better sense of it now. We can sit with you and talk about how old is your child? What category are they in? Are they in 3 years old? Are they in school? Are they in transition? Are they an adult living out on their own? We can look at that and we can actually create budgets and cash flows for them to say what's coming in from their SSI, what is Medicaid paying, what's the family paying? And then we could put the expenses against that. And we can come up with, if government benefits paying $12,000 a year and your child's expenses is $32,000 a year, we're short, right? And what is that shortfall? And sometimes people say, well, I thought the government's going to pay everything. And I think as we watch our legislators fight over things and we watch the different parties and we talk about the different organizations who believe different things, the fact that our child will ever be 100% funded into the future is pretty small, right? But we do get good funding, right? We get funding for housing and we get funding for medical. And so over and above that are all the things that are quality of life that make our child better, their lives better. And one of the things sometimes I ask JJ, can the ABLE account be used for this? And her answer to me is, well, does it make their life better, right? So, and people ask me that about the trust too. Can we use that? And it's really about making the quality of life better. The government pays the basic support and these programs make the lives better. So this is what we're doing through this process of saying, what does your child's expenditure is going to be now and into the future, and where's the money going to come from. And at some point, we should probably put under the other, we probably should have ABLE account, because the ABLE account will be used to pay these expenses as well. So if the rules of the government rules say our child can only have $2,000, or up to this point, the rules have always been they can have a home, a car, a prepaid funeral, and $2,000 in their name to keep their benefits and Medicaid and SSI. All of a sudden, 6 years ago, and in Illinois, 4.5 years ago, we got to say we got another list. We have a house, car, prepaid funeral, $2,000, and an ABLE account. Okay, so that's a really important thing that allowed so much freedom and better quality of life today and into the future. All right, so the one thing we have been taught is, because of those rules that the government sets for us, make sure that we're not giving money directly to our child in cash, right? Make sure that we're not leaving to a sibling with the understanding that they'll take care of our child, because that's risky too. Okay, that's what my parents had done. My parents, when they had in their will, they had said when they passed away, they would leave me, my sister, who had a disability, share of her inheritance, and I would take care of her with it, because they knew that she couldn't have more than a house, car, prepaid funeral, and $2,000. So they had left it to me, keeping their fingers crossed that I was going to do the right thing, that I wasn't going to take the money and go off to Hawaii, that I wouldn't get sued and it would be at risk, all those things, right? Or if it's in my name and I get divorced, it's at risk. So we avoid giving it to our siblings because there's risk, and we can't use traditional support types of trusts, because those would also disqualify our child from those important benefits. So along came about 30 years ago, this special needs trust lets us put money into an account at our death or during our lifetime. It's spent for what the government won't pay. So it's spent for supplemental care over and above what the government pays for. And the flexibility of this is, when the person with the child passes away, what's left goes to heirs and go to charity, can go to anybody you say, right? So that's the basics of the third party trust. But it means A, going to an attorney, B, creating the proper special needs trust, and C, if you're going to open an account, opening the account in the name of the trust. And it became a little cumbersome when you're just putting small amounts of money away, right? But that was a vehicle, the very first vehicle we had, where we could, when we did that calculation of what we need to save, this was the first tool. Then they came about a second tool. The second tool was called a payback special needs trust. And it allowed us, when our child had too much money, to put it into that trust. And it worked so that we could, first of all, it was a little more complicated. Only certain people could set it up. It got more flexible over time. So if someone got an inheritance of $50,000, that $50,000, we could have an attorney create this payback trust, put the $50,000 in it after court approval. So the trust had to be set up. The court had to approve it, and we put the money in. And that money would allow, in that trust, the child to continue to keep their benefits. And when the child passes away, the government got reimbursed for Medicaid spent. So if your child's going along and all of a sudden they get this inheritance, but they have Medicaid for 25 years already, then all of a sudden they get this inheritance. We could take the inheritance, have the attorney set up the payback trust, put it into the payback trust. Now the payback on that account when the child passes away would be all Medicaid spent for the child's whole lifetime, not just from the time that account was set up, but all the way back to when the child first got Medicaid. Okay, that's an important thing to understand how these payback trusts work. But once the money's in there, the child gets their benefits back. Okay, but with the payback trust, there's annual reporting to the government. You got to tell them, you got to do a report, you have some fees to go to court. There's a lot of different things that apply when you have legal documents like trusts. So they're different. Okay, so the one on the left is called a third party special needs trust. It's for other people's money. Okay, so if I wanted to leave something for my son, that's how I would do it. But if my son got his own money and it stopped his benefit, I would use the trust on the right. Okay, so we got two trusts that have come about over time. All right, so we've dealt with that for a very long time. And there's been a lot of different ways. If somebody inherited $10,000, if somebody inherited $10,000, it's enough to cut them off from their benefits, right? But it wasn't enough to spend 6,000 of it on an attorney and put the 4,000 in the trust. That was always the issue. And so because of that, and then this other trust was also used for other purposes like child support, but they were great vehicles. They were great tools. But when we got these monies, I had a child who went to the gambling casino with their parents, and they won $10,000, or it was $12,000, right? Well, $12,000 was not enough to go spend money on a first party trust and then put what was left in it. So along came these opportunities. So the tools we now had at that point was government benefits. We had SSI, we have SSDI if the person had their own work record. We have DAC, which is the Disabled Adult Child Social Security Benefit, and Medicare and Medicaid. Those important programs that provides healthcare and money had rules. And out of those rules, 30 years ago, started the Third Party Special Needs Trust, and then in early 1990, the Payback Trust. But we still had limitations, so we needed flexibility. So along came a new tool, which is in Illinois 4.5 years ago, passed about 6 years ago. And so now I'm going to turn it over to JJ, because this tool gave us more flexibility, give us many, many more opportunities. So JJ, I'll turn this over to you.
Thanks, Marianne. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight to hear about these important financial tools for individuals who have disabilities. I'm going to go right to the next slide, although I will point out that the individuals whose photos you see on this presentation are Illinois residents, and they are Illinois Able account owners. Next slide. Next slide. So an ABLE account, ABLE stands for Achieving a Better Life Experience. Simply put, these are financial accounts. Think similar to 529 or a tax advantage savings account or investment account. But in this case, these are for people with disabilities, eligible people with disabilities that they can have, you can have it. I'm going to use the word you, and that refers to the person with the disability that you can own to save and invest money for a variety of needs for the expenses that come with living with a disability, while preserving benefits that you may be on. You don't have to be on benefits to be able to open and own an ABLE account, but if you are on benefits, particularly SSI, ABLE accounts are an easy tool to open, save money, and build your independence. Next slide. As Marianne has alluded to, disability advocates fought for the ABLE account because of these benefits caps that have created chronic financial instability for people with disabilities. If you're on SSI, the most you can have in assets, cash assets, is $2,000, a car, a house, but there's just no way to build any real financial stability. Our benefit system also disincentivizes people with disabilities from working, because if you're going to earn money and try to save it, you're going to lose your benefits. And I want to make sure to point out that the ABLE account is a panacea for some of that, not all of it, when it comes to assets and income tests the Social Security Administration administers. And as Marianne mentioned, you have to have means to have special needs trusts. They cost money to open, and sometimes you'll spend most of the money that you have either inherited or received in an insurance settlement or other, just getting the trust set up. So along came ABLE. ABLE accounts do some very important things. They help preserve SSI benefits up to $100,000 in the account balance. Let me make it real clear. What an ABLE account does up to $100,000 is if you were on Social Security, supplemental security income, you can save up to $100,000 in your Illinois ABLE account without jeopardizing your Social Security benefits. The account itself can grow much bigger than that. It can grow up to 450,000 in size. But if you are concerned about that SSI cap and not losing those benefits, the $100,000 marker is important. There's no Medicaid asset cap. You can save more if you are working. Again, the you I'm referring to is the individual with the disability who is eligible for the account. Those gifts, small inheritances, insurance settlements can all be put into ABLE accounts. They are a great alternative or an add-on to a special needs trust. Marianne is going to talk about how they go hand in hand. One thing to remember is that you don't have one or the other. You can have both. And they can be very complementary to each other. You can have an ABLE account and not a special needs trust. You can certainly have a special needs trust and not have an ABLE account, depending on your needs and circumstances. Earnings and withdrawals are tax-free as long as they're used for qualified disability expenses. We will talk about what those are. If you have an existing 529 college savings account, you can roll that over into an ABLE account with various rules, but it's very easy to do it. I won't go deep into that tonight. I will scan the investment and checking options that are part of the Illinois ABLE account. Won't spend a lot of time on that. What I want to recommend to everybody is that you visit the illinoisable.com website, and you'll see the website, the URL at the end of the presentation. Everything that I'm talking about is there. You can study it, you can learn more, and you can always call Illinois ABLE to learn more. If you're an Illinois taxpayer and you make a contribution to an Illinois ABLE account, any Illinois ABLE account, does not have to be of that of a family member, you can take up to a $10,000 tax deduction if you're filing individually, or $20,000 if you're filing jointly. And finally, and very importantly to the disability community and advocates, the person with the disability always owns the account. There may be an authorized representative. We call that person or entity an authorized individual who has the authority to open and manage the account under certain circumstances, but the person with the disability always owns the account. Next slide. Okay. Basic parameters, eligibility, 2 things to know: onset of disability before age 26, and you either receive or you qualify to receive Social Security disability benefits, SSI, SSDI. You do not have to be receiving those benefits to open an ABLE account. You also do not have to have gotten your diagnosis before age 26. While I would say the vast majority of those who open accounts today, their diagnosis was documented before they turned 26. In the case of somebody, for example, who developed a mental health disability that was apparent in their teens or earlier, but didn't become disabling until late 20s, one just has to have a letter from a licensed physician that documents when the disability occurred and that the disability is of a level of severity to make the person eligible for disability, for SSI and SSDI. Next slide. This just gives you a sense of how many Illinoisans with disabilities are eligible. It's close to 300,000. And because of that age of onset requirement, the vast majority of individuals who own accounts currently have developmental or intellectual disabilities. But interestingly, we have a nice broad range of people of all ages who have opened and have ABLE accounts. And that's something to remember. Remember how I said your onset has to have been prior to 26? You don't have to open the account before the person or you turn 26. You can open an ABLE account at any time, as long as you meet those other 2 criteria. Next slide.
It's interesting, JJ. So 35% of the persons who are owners of ABLE are greater than 36.
Are older than 36.
Because
Isn't
a lot
that
of them are
interesting?
working and able to save. Yeah, it's interesting.
And they're, you know, it is interesting. I think a lot of it is working, and there's also there's been a real pent up demand for people with disabilities who are older than 36 to have some way to continue to save their money, and they've not been able to do it until now. Next slide. This is one of our able account owners doing his homework with his mom. Next slide. So very simply put, there are two key players in an able account. The first is the account owner. As I mentioned before, the person with the disability is always the account owner. If the individual with the disability is a what we would call a legally competent adult, somebody who's not under guardianship, he or she can open that account for himself, manage it for himself or herself, and off they go. That account owner can also assign an authorized agent of some kind who can receive statements or have the ability to call in and assist with the account. And the account owner can also grant full authority to somebody else that person chooses to open and manage the account for the account owner. So there are a lot of ways that the account owner can do that who is not under guardianship. If the account owner is under guardianship or is a minor, then in Illinois, a parent, a guardian of the person, a guardian of the estate can open and manage the account on behalf of that account owner. If the individual is under guardianship, the individual cannot open or manage his or her own account. It has to be done by somebody else, it has to be done by the guardian. Finally, something to note is that the rules have recently been changed by the Department of the Treasury, and you're going to be hearing in 2022, you're going to be hearing a lot more about how and when a person or an entity that serves as a rep payee for the Social Security benefits of an individual, it can, in some cases, open and manage an able account on behalf of an account owner. Again, that's coming in 2022. You'll hear more about it. Let me give you some information on where you can sign up to get the newsletter and get more information. And of course, Marianne will know as well as this all comes down. Any questions on this part of it, Mary, that we want to try to answer now?
I have one question that came up.
Sure.
So the account owner is always the person with the disability, even if they're under guardianship. So
correct.
The eligible adult who's not under guardianship is the owner, but the person under guardianship would also be the owner, but there must be an authorized individual on their account.
That's correct. If you're under guardianship. And something that if for those of you on the call who are collaborating with a disability service provider, an agency, something that you should know is if you have a loved one who is living in a group home or receives services from the agency, and the agency serves as rep payee currently on that individual's benefits, that does not give the agency authority to open the account for the account owner. Again, it has to be the guardian if that person is under guardianship. Going back to the account owner who's got his own legal rights, if he or she wants to give the agency under a power of attorney the authority to open and manage the account, it can easily be done. And all you need to do is get in touch with customer service and we can walk you through that.
Okay.
Next slide.
Mary, did we have a question on that? You're muted, Mary.
Oh.
I think Mary had a question, but she's
JJ?
There.
Yes,
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
We did have.
Oh, you're muted again.
We had somebody who asked a question about the difference between the authorized individual and the authorized agents and wanted to know if something happens to the authorized individual, do the agents automatically become successors? What happens? No. What happens if something happens to the individual?
If something happens to the authorized individual, currently and going forward, a successor authorized individual can be named, and it's probably a good idea to do that in advance of something, say, potentially happening to the authorized individual. If the plan gets notification that the authorized individual is no longer able to manage the account will be frozen until a new authorized individual is assigned. Again, using a power of attorney, or if the subsequent authorized individual if there's a new guardian assigned, for example. often most often that situation you're describing, Mary, is because somebody is under guardianship. And so if something happens to the guardian who is also the authorized individual, that's when the account gets frozen until a new guardian is assigned.
So was there a term of authorized agent, Mary, that somebody asked about?
Yes. And an authorized agent has not as much
Limited
ability.
Correct. There are levels of authority, and it's a really good thing to have. I want to give you an interesting example of something that just happened recently. We can't recommend how people manage these accounts, and I can't recommend strongly enough that you read the enrollment form, read the plan disclosure statement, so you understand what the different roles are. But you've got the account owner, and you've got that authorized individual, which is when that person has a role, that person operates all aspects of the account. And then in between those, there are those other levels of agency that an account owner with legal authority can grant. So you can grant somebody or an entity, let's say your service provider, the ability to receive statements. So they can see your quarterly statements and help you make decisions. Or you can you can take it up to allowing them to make withdrawals or move some of the investment options, but you still are controlling the account.
Mhm.
So there are various levels of agency authorization, and they're laid out really clearly when you go through the enrollment process. And to give you an interesting example of something that happened recently, is that there was an adult who was an account owner who was managing his account very well and independently, but he used the help of the staff at the agency that served him, the Center for Independent Living, and they helped him. They guided him with decision making and with things that he did with his account. So they knew how he was operating his account, but he never assigned anybody as an authorized agent to receive any of the information. And unfortunately, he had ordered a transaction on the account, a withdrawal on the account, to pay for, in advance, to pay for funeral and burial expenses. And there was a red flag for security purposes raised on the withdrawal amount because of the size. And during the process of trying to find out whether this was a legitimate withdrawal request, the adult passed away. And so it threw things into limbo because there was nobody else that the plan could call to say, we can't get a hold of this person. We're trying to verify that this is a legitimate withdrawal request. So, it's not a bad idea to consider having some kind of an authorized agent if you're managing your own account.
Yeah.
Next slide.
It's good input. Okay.
All right. Total amount that can go into an Illinois Able account is $15,000 a year. So that means if you have a 529 college savings account with $30,000 in it, and you don't put anything else into the Illinois Able account this year, but you want to roll over, you can roll over 15,000 this year and roll over 15,000 next year. 15,000 aggregate. That means from all sources: your paycheck, gifts from grandma, small insurance settlements. And keep this in mind, SSI benefits. We'll talk about that. The Social Security Administration just recently updated its program operations manual to confirm that you can have your Social Security, your SSI benefits, direct deposited into your ABLE account. But something to think about is that money that goes in every month is considered goes toward that total of $15,000. So if you think that there are going to be other ways in which to put a total of $15,000 a year in the account, you want to be careful about whether you choose to do direct deposit of SSI benefits. For some people, it's just really easy to be able to do that, but not always. I mentioned that your SSI benefits are preserved to $100,000. If you, the account owner, are working, you can contribute more to your ABLE account each year. I won't go into the details on that. It is clearly laid out on the website, but it can be up to $12,400, whatever the poverty limit is, or your gross earnings. Something to also keep in mind, you may only have one account per person nationwide. I want to make it really clear that there have been instances where an Illinois resident opens an ABLE account and believes they're opening the account in Illinois, when in fact they're opening it in another state's plan. It's really important that if you decide to open an account in Illinois or your state, there may be people on this call tonight who don't live in Illinois, who live in Iowa or other states. Illinois and Iowa are part of the same consortium. We share the same program elements, but it's always advised to look in your own state first, look at that plan first, before you make a decision about which ABLE account you want to open. And I can't stress that strongly enough. You can only have one nationwide. And we have had calls from folks about their account who thought they were an Illinois ABLE and they were not. If you don't have an Illinois ABLE account, and you try to take a tax deduction for contributions made, you will face tax penalties for doing it because you're not in Illinois ABLE.
Is there anything else on there we need to?
Nope, I think we've covered. And no withdrawal limits, by the way. You can take out as much as you want, whenever you want. You don't have to have permission to do it. Contributions can come from anywhere, as mentioned. And Marianne, is this deck going to be shared with participants?
Yeah.
At the end? Okay. So you'll
Yeah.
have this as a resource.
Yeah.
Next slide.
Yeah, we're going to send out the participants. We will send them a copy of the recording.
Great.
Okay.
6 high-quality, low-cost investment options. These are passively managed options that track a blend of underlying funds to create each of these options, starting with aggressive, where the majority of your funds, if you invest in the aggressive account, the aggressive option, are, sorry if you can hear that noise outside, are equity-based underlying funds, all the way down to the conservative option, which is 60% in a cash equivalent. It's not outright cash. It's a Sallie Mae high yield savings account with a small amount of equity and a small amount of bonds as well. So those are the 6 funds. They're described in detail along with a guide on determining what type of investor are you, what's your risk tolerance, when will you need the money, what do you think you're going to be needing the money for? And so those are the kinds of things you'll find on the website to help you think through how you want to put your funds into how you want to, what am I saying? Invest the funds.
Allocate.
That's the
them.
word. Thank you. It's late. Allocate the funds within your Illinois ABLE account.
Yeah.
Next
and
slide.
as an investment person, that's an important decision. So
Yes,
if you need
it
it
is.
tomorrow, you wouldn't choose aggressive because the
Yes.
market could fall that, and you look at the account and you need it. So getting some help with picking out how you do that is important.
Yes, and I think that's a really good point. If you work with an investment advisor or a trusted advisor, it's always a good idea to walk through this with that person. The 7th option, it's called an option, but it's a checking account. It's operated by Fifth Third Bank. You cannot go into a Fifth Third Bank bricks and mortar branch and open an ABLE account or do transactions on your Illinois ABLE account. Important to remember, those are the 2 differences between the checking account that comes with your Illinois ABLE plan and going and opening just a regular Fifth Third checking account. Why is that? Why is it that you can't go into Fifth Third and open up the ABLE checking account or open up your ABLE account altogether or deposit a check with the teller over the counter? The reason is that the Illinois ABLE plan has the responsibility to play a fiduciary role in making sure that you don't go over the $15,000 annual contribution limit, because if you go over it, you may be facing some of the penalties that come with having the asset caps for Social Security. So everything that you do with your Illinois ABLE account needs to be done through Illinois ABLE, including opening the checking account. Great thing is, though, you can get a checkbook and you can write checks. You will get a debit card if you want a debit card, and you can go to any of 55,000 plus fee-free ATMs and withdraw money from those ATMs. So that's one thing that you can do, is use that debit card. There are no overdraft fees, and the Fifth Third checking account is FDIC insured up to $250,000. Next slide. Okay, there are fees associated with having an Illinois ABLE account compared to the cost of handling a trust. They're very low fees. In fact, I would say based on the quality of the product that you can invest in, the fees are extremely low. If you have the checking account, as long as you keep $250 in it, or you get e-delivery of your statements, no fees and no overdraft fees ever. For having the Illinois ABLE account, you're going to pay a quarterly account maintenance fee. It's $11.25 a quarter if you get e-delivery, and it's $15 a quarter if you get paper. And then those 6 investment options, depending upon the investment option that you choose, there's an annual asset-based fee on those options that ranges from 34 basis points to 37 basis points. What does that mean? To give you a sense, if you think about $1,000, it's about $3.40 on that $1,000 to $3.70 on that $1,000. By the way, I just realized, Marianne, that the asset-based fees on this are now outdated. They've been reduced down to starting at 30 basis points.
Okay.
So again, go to the website, you'll get the updated fees there, and Marianne and I'll send you over a new deck shortly. Okay.
Yep. And those are very, very low fees. So if you have some context of, investing outside versus investing here, those are very, very low percentages.
And as the plans grow nationally, we're continuing to work to get those fees down. I hope to have some really big news on that come 2022 as well.
Okay.
Next slide. Okay. People always want to know, well, what can I spend the money on? I will say, look at the list on the left. I won't read through it. Those are the specific things that are identified by the Department of Treasury that you can use, that you can spend your ABLE assets on. These are called qualified disability expenses. But what's more important is what's on the right. And that is that the Treasury stated, this list is not exhaustive. Any expense that maintains or improves health, independence, or quality of life can be considered a qualified disability expense. They can be construed broadly. They can include basic living expenses. The expenses are not limited to those that are medically necessary. What we recommend, people say, do I have to submit receipts? No, you just should keep receipts and keep records just as you would for any other tax-based plan, savings plan, in case the IRS makes a decision to conduct an audit, in which case you'll be asked to show evidence of the disability and to show how the funds have been spent. Next slide. This is information about opening an Illinois ABLE account. You can open it easily online. IllinoisABLE.com, Illinois spelled out, able.com is the website. There's lots of information on the website, and you can click to enroll right from there. You can also go to the website and download an application and mail it in paper if you prefer. And we've provided the customer service number that's also on the website. You can call them anytime and they will help walk you through the process of enrolling. Next slide.
And it's a great website. Whenever I have questions, I can go there, or I can either go
Oh,
there,
I'm glad
or if
to
I
hear
can't, or I call JJ sometimes too.
Oh yeah. Good.
Go
And
to
I'm
the
glad
ABLE.
that I'm glad
Go
it's
first.
helpful, because we just did a total upgrade on the website last year, and these things can be complicated. We're trying to make them as easy as we can to understand. So try to make it as make ourselves available to help you out. Okay. Test your knowledge. Will I lose my benefits if I have an Illinois ABLE account? Yes or no? The answer is no, you will not lose your benefits. May I put my paycheck into my Illinois ABLE account? Yes, you can. Easy way to make sure that you don't exceed that asset cap in another type of account. How many ABLE accounts may I have? One. No matter where you open it, you may only have one. Do I have to have permission to withdraw funds or do I have to send in receipts? No. Is an ABLE account free? No, but the fees are low. Will Medicaid take the money from my account if I die? Well, we've just passed legislation in Illinois that allows a person, an account owner, to establish what's called a payment upon death agreement, where if and when the individual dies, those funds can be directed to another ABLE eligible individual. We have not yet operationalized it. If you don't have a payment upon death account agreement, and you were on Medicaid benefits, like what Marianne was describing before, similar to those payback trusts, Medicaid has the authority to come in and recover benefits paid not during your lifetime, but from the time you opened the ABLE account till, the time you passed away.
So that is a difference to understand that the first party
Yes.
trust, sometimes people say, well, shouldn't I just put it over there? But this will only go back from the account
To
was
when you
open,
open the
not.
account.
Yeah.
Right. But even better is now
Yeah.
with the new legislation, you can redirect the assets so that they don't go into your estate. And as long as they don't go into your estate, Medicaid can't recover.
Yeah.
Lastly,
We'll learn more
my-
about that in the future.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
In 2022, we should have a lot more information on it.
Great.
And yes, Social Security benefits can be direct deposited into your ABLE account, and those funds can be put into the investment options, believe it or not.
So a lot of times people say, well, what should I do? Should I put my Social Security there? Should I put my paycheck there? I would say Social Security is there to pay your regular support. So if possible, and you have both, I would say I put my paycheck, not always, but you kind of look at each person's situation. But a lot of times we'll put the paycheck into the ABLE and use the Social Security benefits for basic support. Then if you have
Right.
too much Social Security, you still, and you getting up to the reporting time, you still could move additional funds in, but always
That's
make
right.
sure that you understand you're limiting your 15,000.
That's right. Always move over those excess funds from
Yeah.
any regular checking account so you don't
Yeah.
hit that 2,000.
Because if
So,
you're putting
Marianne,
your
I
money
was-
in and grandma wants to give you money, then grandma can't give you money, right? Right.
And something I want to mention that is sometimes folks think that because you're not subject to the $2,000 asset cap by having an ABLE account, that you're also not subject to the income test. But that is not the
Right.
case.
Right.
ABLE accounts are asset accounts. They're not income protectors. So if you're earning money, even if you put those earnings into your ABLE account, which is a great idea, you're still going to continue to be subject to the Social Security income test. That's
Yeah,
just
so remember,
important to know.
remember SSI has two rules, assets and income. So
Right.
assets is the 2,000, but right
Right.
now income is the 1310 a month. If you make 1310 a month and you can't put it in the ABLE and not count it. So it's
That's
income,
right.
it's income.
You can put it in ABLE, but it's still
Right.
going to count as income.
It's still going to count as income. So you need to understand that rule.
Yeah.
Okay.
I won't take a lot of time on this. This is just a way for us to toot our horn here at Illinois ABLE. We've worked really hard to stand up in one of the best programs, if not the best in the country. We work with 17 other states as part of the National ABLE Alliance. Our alliance represents well more than a quarter of the ABLE eligible population across the country. So we're really involved with working on legislation. We're now currently working on the Able Age Adjustment Act. We've been fighting for it for 6 years. You know, that pre-age 26 disability onset requirement, we're trying to get that raised to pre-age 46 because there are a lot of people who are otherwise eligible to have an ABLE account who can't open them because of that age of onset rule. I will say that we worked really closely with, I wouldn't say closely, we worked to communicate with the Social Security Administration to get clarity about direct deposit and other things. And they updated their POMs recently. And I believe it was in response to the work that our states have done together. We work very closely with disability organizations and with Marianne and others who understand what a great benefit ABLE accounts can be. So if you're listening in, and you know, certainly folks that are part of the ARC of Quad Cities, we're glad you're listening. Please share with others that we are willing to talk to your group, talk to your organization, talk to staff of organizations to help educate them on the benefits of having an ABLE plan. Next slide.
The other interesting thing about ABLE, Illinois ABLE, is that you can use Illinois ABLE, doesn't matter where you live.
Right.
So by state, some states don't have an ABLE. Some states have an ABLE only for their state, and some states have them that anyone can use them. So
That's right.
it's important to
Thank you.
understand that we have lots of clients who are in other states who have opened up Illinois ABLE because it's a good plan. So, okay. Okay, so now we're going to get to, well, we talked about special needs trusts, and we've had other classes where we go into the details of those. You have limitations in other areas. So what are you going to use when? So we're going to talk about the different kinds of things we might use. So I created this little chart to give you some sense of just how they compare, right? So the first column is money in your child's name or your name. The second column is the third party special needs trust. The third column is the first party, which is the payback trust. And then we have the Illinois ABLE. So if a person in their own name, I said, what's maximum that can be in these accounts if you have SSI? So in their own name is $2,000 plus those other exempt assets. There is no limit to what goes into the special needs trust. And the Illinois ABLE account has the $100,000 limit for SSI purposes. Okay. Now recognize that what happens if you have if you're a person with a disability and you're getting SSI, if at some point you get your own work record and you move from SSI to SSDI, or you move from SSI to DAC, which is getting benefits on your parents, that SSI limitation goes away. So we may have people funding the ABLE and keeping it under below 100,000. But when the parent retires, the child moves out of that plan and goes into a different plan that doesn't have the limitation. Then we can continue to go over the 100,000. So It's important to understand those nuances. Again, the maximum contributions on the ABLE is the federal gifting amount, which right now is 15,000. There is no limit to what you can put in your own account unless you're going to go over the 2,000. And there's no limit on contributions into the special needs trust. Again, there's the way we define what you can put into your own name is anything for the benefit of the person, it's yours. The third party special needs trust, the rules are basically, it's allowed to be used for the benefit of the beneficiary. And the first party is the benefit of the sole benefit of that person. So the third party trust, I may be able to use it for a person's vacation, and they might have to take another person with them. So that traveling companion, where in the first party trust, you might only be able to use it for yourself. And the ABLE, as we talked about, is anything qualified disability related, but it really is very broad. So I encourage you to go to the Illinois ABLE site and check on that. Again, everything else is taxable except Illinois ABLE. The income on all the other accounts are taxable. The contribution limits we talked about, and requiring of expenditures. There's requirement of expenditures on the first party trust, and the Illinois ABLE is like a 529. If you got audited, you would need to do that reporting. So you'll see at the end, we're talking about tracking expenditures, but all, any kind of a trust, you would be tracking those expenditures as well, because you're going to do reporting on them for tax purposes. Okay. Now, if we look at who's putting money in these, right? Important. So a parent's money, where's it going to go? A parent's money can go into the third party trust. It cannot go into the first party trust, but it can go into the ABLE. So when we talk about other people's money, what about the person with the disabilities money, their own money? That money cannot go into the third party trust. It can go into the first party trust, and it can go into the ABLE. So the ABLE is very broad. It can accept money from anyone. There's dollar limitations, of course. Limitation to funding. Again, we have the $15,000 max on the ABLE. Who controls the money? So the special needs trusts are never controlled by the person with a disability. If a person doesn't have a guardian, they are controlling the ABLE. So it's a great tool. I call it a teaching tool. It teaches people how to use money. It's a self-esteem tool. I call it lots of things because it really has a huge benefit. Efficient for small accounts. So trusts, sometimes by the time you get them set up, and then maybe you have to do tax reporting on them and things like that, they aren't as useful for small amounts of money. The ABLE is perfect for, smaller gifts, inheritances, as long as it's under that 15,000 that you can give. So it's very small. It's a very efficient, where the trusts aren't very efficient for everyday kind of usage. And then again, the only thing that has tax-free savings is the ABLE. Okay. All right. So how do we, now we're going to talk about money going in. Okay. Third party money, I call it. So other people besides a person with a disability. So grandma wants to give a gift. If grandma's going to give a 5,000 or 10,000, you hear people giving their annual gift. Anything under the 15,000, as long as nobody else has put money in, the ABLE is a great tool. If somebody was doing a gift of 100,000, we might put the smaller amount in the ABLE and the rest in a third-party special needs trust, right? Inheritances. Some people leave small inheritances. Those can be left. We have to be careful because if you get a small inheritance and the ABLE account has already been funded, you might have to wait till you can get it in there, right? Large money goes into the third-party trust. There was a lot of fear when the ABLE accounts were first set up on behalf of, I think, special needs attorneys, only because the fear was that people would say, oh, I don't need a trust anymore. Okay. You do need the trust for the big money. So if I'm leaving an inheritance for my son, if all I could put it and leave him was 15,000, that wouldn't last him very long. Okay. But the important thing is funding the trust. So I want to fund, I give money to my son into the ABLE account every year. I want him to have access to that. In my death, or if I want to do a major gift, I would put it in the third-party trust. What if I die? Who's going to be funding his ABLE account when I'm no longer here? If he needs that fund set up on a regular basis. In my son's situation, he lives in an apartment and he's in a program where he has to pay the rent out of his disability benefit. However, his SSDI check and his SSI check aren't big enough to pay his rent and also let him eat, right? Just his rent is too much. And so I never could help him with his rent because that would be considered income and it would be, he would get less SSI. Well, now I could fund his ABLE account and the ABLE account lets him pay his rent, okay?
And Marion, you can fund that, you can have regular amounts go from his special needs, from the third-party special needs trust into the ABLE account. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, and what I've recently learned, so I have set my son's special needs trust up to say the trustees have the discretion to fund his ABLE account for him. So I'm gone, I still can do what I'm doing in my lifetime. I've recently also learned that a first-party trust can also fund the ABLE. So yay. So those trusts, yeah, ABLE money is helping my son today and into the future. I was worried about, I'm funding it, who's going to do it? So now my language in my son's trust says my future trustee can also do the same thing that I'm doing. They can replicate what I'm doing. Okay, I would think that was a really important thing to understand, that we're doing it, but somebody else can step in and continue to do that. Now, what about first party money? Meaning, what if my son has money and it's going to cut him off from his benefits? So inheritances, so many people say, well, we told everybody to leave inheritances to the first party trust. We've told them, to the third party trust. And then we know that grandma's going to do that. And then grandma dies. And there's $10,000 coming to my son. What happened? He just lost some benefits. So, and for my son, Medicaid has an asset limitation, has an asset test. So it's really important because his meds are really expensive. And if he doesn't have Medicaid to pay those bills, he's in trouble. So an inheritance received an error, a small inheritance goes to an ABLE. Okay, it's under that 15,000 and the fund account hasn't been funded. A large inheritance goes for a first party trust. So we just worked with someone who inherited money from her dad. She was on benefits. We were able to open up an ABLE right away and put some money into it over in December and some money in January. And then the rest went into a first party trust and get her benefits back. So it's planning, but these errors are fixable. Small errors are fixable with the ABLE and large errors are fixable with the ABLE and the first party trust. Small litigation cases where there's small payments on a settlement can go to the ABLE. Larger settlements go to the first party trust. You're earning too much. So you're not getting rid of the earning too much, but you're at least able to save it. Okay. You can't spend it. People say, okay, now my child's account or my account, if it's me, is getting really close to $2,000. And if I put my paycheck in, I got a problem. ABLE has solved that problem. Okay. And then again, the direct deposit of SSI is a great place for the first party money.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Anything else on ABLE that we need to touch on that's new or you think might be happening?
We talked about this recent legislation, more news to come. We talked about direct deposits allowed from Social Security benefits. There's a new list of those who can open and manage an ABLE account on behalf of an account owner that's coming down the pike. I think I mentioned the rep payees are going to be allowed to play a role. I would just say stay tuned, more information to come in the next couple of months as we interpret the rules and learn and operationalize them for the program. And I think the next slide might have information about how you can get updates.
Oh, well,
maybe it
JJ?
doesn't.
next coming in. Yeah.
No
JJ?
worries. Yes.
There was some new information regarding beneficiaries.
And we talked about that to transfer on death.
Oh, transfer on death. And you're right, Mary. That's a good point. Successor beneficiaries, there's
Yeah.
the transfer on death that you can set up while you're alive. Until now, you could not name a successor beneficiary to your ABLE account. So once it was open, you had that, the funds couldn't go anywhere. Now you can name a successor beneficiary, which has to be an eligible member, I believe, of the same family, which is, but you can name a successor beneficiary to the account. Again, we're unpacking the rules, so we'll have more information for you come probably the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that'll be really important. And we'll do another session once we have
Yeah.
all that clear. Great.
Yep.
Okay, so we talked about how to get money in. How do you might use this when your care plans? You know that we're helping people sit down and say, what's my plan for the future? How do we create a care plan? So a couple of things we think about when we think about the ABLE is think about what do I need? What am I going to need to spend in the next year? You know, what do I need for transportation, education, my job coach if I'm not getting funding for that, personal support services, rent, like I use for my son, recreational activities. ABLE's perfect for that. I'm saying, okay, I'm planning. I need to make sure there's money in that account. If it hasn't accumulated, I need to put more in. Or if it's there, kind of look and I want to make sure that ABLE account has enough of the annual needs to be expended. Could you use that's trust as well? Yes, but this is a great way to think about it, that I want to make sure there's always enough in there to pay annual fees. And the big expenditures of the money that has to fund the ABLE is the big pot of money, and looking about the future funding. So we can do both. You can say, okay, I'm at death, I'm going to fund this special needs trust with the big $1 million, whatever you're going to leave for it. And then that money is going to flow into the ABLE. And maybe the ABLE account, you say every year, I'm going to put the 15 in and let that keep growing. And maybe I'm going to pull, if I'm putting 15 in, but I know I'm going to take 5 out, I'm going to make sure I put 15 in the next year. And you keep thinking about how do I build that until it's got enough. You know, I always, when I'm doing regular financial planning, I always tell people, make sure in your liquidity account, you have enough for the living expenses you have for at least 2 to 3 years. It's a lot, right? And then you say everything else should be in the bigger pots of money, can be invested so that if we have a stock market crash or something, I have time to wait. So I kind of think about this the same way when I'm doing planning to say how much should be in the ABLE and how much should be in the special needs trust. I segment those between the two. That helps. Okay, and then other things that you can use, I think that the ABLE can pay for all these things. Is that right? Advocacy services, guardianship fees, other legal fees. Now, the special needs trust should not pay guardianship fees. Okay, a person's own, especially the first party trust, because the thinking about the trust is a person typically wouldn't use their own money to take their rights away, but the ABLE account can be used for that. So people sometimes think about that for that perspective, but you can use the ABLE account for those expenses. Good way to save. Because if you're planning to set up an ABLE for someone and you're setting it up and you know what's going to happen at age 18 is you're going to have guardianship fees. Okay. You're going to have legal fees when you're starting to set up legal work. So those are things you can be thinking about as well. So tracking of ABLE, as we talked about, how should you do that? What's the best way? It's what works for you. You know, do you want to have a binder? You want to keep receipts. If you're going to keep receipts, I always say scan them, because if you keep receipts, they fade. If you scan them, you have a much better shot at having good receipts. If you get audited, somebody comes back and says, well, how'd you spend the money? You'll have the receipt. So I say kind of categories. When you spend the money out of the ABLE, just like anything else, we do this for college funding too, that you might have to report on. What did you spend it on? What category? Put the date and put that money into that category. So if you ever have to do it, you could use a Mint, you could use Quicken, you could use any kind of tool that's out there. But if you keep receipts and you feel like you want to keep those, scan them, okay? And we're looking at, in our planning system, to put some tools in there that you'd be able to store some of that and track it for yourself, so that you could push a button and say, I want all my ABLE expenses for a certain year. I think that'll be, any kind of tool you use would be beneficial. Okay, all right. So we're going to wrap up, and then we'll see if there's any more questions. And then I want to introduce someone who's helped sponsor this event as well. So if I have an ABLE, I've done it, I got the Illinois ABLE set up, and I have a special needs trust, now what? Well, make sure your special needs trust is right, and make sure your special needs trust gives the trustee the authority to fund the ABLE account. That's really important. So if you had an ABLE account, if you had a special needs trust that was set up 10 years ago, it can't do that because the ABLE account didn't exist. Well, there's probably is enough discretionary language in your trust to allow the trustee to do that. But I really like to see that language in there that says, I give my trustees the right to fund the special needs trust to the maximum allowable per law, right? So it's a good thing. Creating a tracking binder, like we're talking about, building a plan and figuring out how much should go in the ABLE. How much should go in the ABLE, how much should go in the trust, how do I do that? A lot of times trusts aren't being funded till death, and ABLEs are funded during life. And then pull it together. So you have all these pieces, pull it together, and then you have to manage it. So when you open the ABLE, you might decide you want the funding to look a certain way, so much in the checking, so much in the investment accounts. You might want to change it. You should look at that when you're planning. You should look at all of that on a regular basis. It's important. So why don't we talk a little bit about how they can stay up to speed of what's going on with ABLE?
Thank you. We have a monthly newsletter called Access ABLE, and we keep folks updated on all the things that are happening with the ABLE plans, both in the state and our Illinois ABLE plan, but also nationally. In order to sign up for the monthly newsletter, you can go onto the website. There's a resources link with the drop down that has a lot of resources on it. You can click, you can go through there to sign up for the monthly newsletter, or just shoot an email to able@illinoistreasurer.gov.
Just a reminder of how to get information from ABLE, illinoisable.com. And anything else to add about how to get more information that you want to add?
I don't think so. Our customer service is pretty helpful. Obviously, if you're struggling and you have specific questions that you want to send our way, you can email me at jjhanley@illinoistreasurer.gov. That's not on this slide, but jjhanley@illinoistreasurer.gov.
I have one more quick question for you that somebody told me that they opened up their account and then her mom got very sick and needed some surgery. So she didn't get the account funded in time and it was closed. What could she do? Does she have to reopen it all over again, or is there something that she can do to get it reopened to fund it?
I think that the accounts and I can work with whoever that is to see if we can resolve it. But if the account sits unfunded for, I believe, 60 days for security reasons, the system will close it. But it still stays in the background. The data is still there. I think it's just a matter of calling customer service and letting them know, and they can usually revive it. They may ask you to go through the enrollment process again, but in many cases that doesn't have to take place.
Okay, great.
If it remains unfunded, or if you're providing legal documentation to serve as an authorized individual, but you haven't provided it, or it's not been verified, that can also slow up the process.
Okay. So before we wrap up, I have I want to thank someone who has, and I think she's going to be able to speak to us for a minute. Tricia Foster, who's a Senior Vice President and Senior Trust Officer at American Bank and Trust, is funding a lot of the ARC of Quad Cities programs like we list here. So Tricia, are you available to Trista? I think it's Trista, right?
Thank you. Yes. Hi, Marianne. I am. As you said, my name is Trista Foster. I'm the Senior Vice President and Senior Trust Officer for American Bank and Trust. And American Bank and Trust is very proud to assist the ARC as a sponsor for this evening's presentation. And we would like to thank the presenters for some great information. I know I'm going to talk to the attorneys I work with about making sure that that language to fund an ABLE account is in their documents. That's excellent. That I was not aware of that being a thing. And I want to thank everyone for attending. Our trust department has been in operation since 1998. We are a full service trust department. We are offering investment services, retirement services, and of course, trust services, including the ability to act as a trustee for special needs trusts. So again, thank you for your participation, and thank you to the presenters. Wonderful job with great information. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. We'll have to catch up.
Thanks, Trista.
Yeah. I'll give you a call. I'd love to talk to you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, great. So thank you very much. Mary, were there any other questions we needed to address?
We do have a couple. There's one, the LIHEAP benefit, is that not affected by ABLE account assets?
Boy, I don't know what that is. I have to be honest.
That I don't know if LIHEAP has an income limitation. I have to look it up. So that is help with utility expenditures. If you have a disability. So,
I could do some research into it. This is the first time I've heard that, the LIHEAP benefit.
LIHEAP, LIHEAP.
LIHEAP.
And I don't even know what it stands for, but I know it's a discount on utilities.
And the question is, does having an ABLE account impact that benefit? I wouldn't want to say that it doesn't, because I've not heard of LIHEAP, but I can, if you want to shoot an email my way or to Marianne, we can make sure we get a clear answer on that.
We will get you an answer.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
LIHEAP stands for Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. Another question, can child support go directly into the ABLE account?
I believe you can have it, it can be set up that way, yes, in the divorce agreement for child support to go directly into an ABLE account.
Yeah, because remember, child support, if the child's 18, child support is considered an asset, income and asset to the child with special needs. So I would think if you're in a divorce situation, you would want to have a court order, at least to have it addressed that way too. But we can probably get a legal answer for individuals too on that. But I know it could be put into it. It's just a matter of, do you need a court order?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You had mentioned that SSI can go into the ABLE account. Can it also go into a special needs trust?
No. So it cannot go into a special needs trust, because remember, if the person had benefits and they were putting in and they were accumulating, can they put their money into a first party trust because their money is too high? Yes, but then they'd be reporting on it, and so it's not a very efficient tool for that perspective. It's much more efficient to use the ABLE.
In the past, you had to be the guardian of the estate in order to open the account. Since that's changed, can we undo the guardianship so it's no longer necessary? And then if we do that, what do we need to do with the ABLE account?
So if someone is a guardian, they're still guardian of the person, but they don't want to be guardian. I got this call. So someone had called me and said, we became the guardian of the estate so that we could open the ABLE. And then we went to court and the judge said, well, you have no assets. Why are you the guardian of the estate? So they were going to undo that because they don't have to be that anymore, but they have to then report to you because they're still guardian of the person. Do they have to tell you anything?
I think if the guardianship status under which they opened the account has changed, they should contact the plan and send in any new guardianship documents.
Okay. We will tell them that.
Yeah.
Because the problem with guardianship of the estate, if you don't need it, if you have no assets that are accountable to the court, was interesting though, I will tell you, that the judge who was working on that case had no idea what an ABLE was. So
yeah,
Illinois judge. So now we have education of
our court system.
Of our court system. So don't parents, my word there is parents, not all professionals know what this is. I'm doing a
Right.
presentation at the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors in a couple of weeks. And they said, we please make sure to cover ABLE accounts because no one knows what they are as financial advisors. So, but they also don't know what special needs trusts are. So
Right.
not everyone understands a lot of the planning that you families are doing. So the fact that you're here and listening to this tonight, kudos to you who are educating yourself.
Yeah.
The ABLE by now should be common, just common, and it just takes
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
Special needs trusts have been around for 30 years. So, and they're not common either. So I will tell you, I always say the average family that has only typical children doesn't have wills and doesn't do their planning. So why would I expect a family who has to do other things like ABLEs for special needs trusts have the expertise to know that they need to do this?
Mhm.
So that's why we put these on, so that everybody has access to it. And ABLE is so accessible to families as a tool. You don't have to go see an attorney. You don't have to do any of that. You just have to go online and you just have to know how to use it. So we will continue to do this with JJ to make sure that you continue to have the information as the program evolves,
Mhm.
because it has
And
really
updated
changed.
information as it comes in for sure.
Yeah, it's really a great tool.
Great.
Any more questions for us?
Unfortunately, our time is running out, so we'll have to answer any additional questions individually. We'd like to thank JJ Hanley, Trista Foster, and the Arc of Quad Cities for being with us this evening. This class has been recorded for future reference and will be posted on our website. We'll be sending a link to you via email once the video is uploaded. Thank you again for your participation. And as always, if you have any questions or if you'd like more information, please feel free to contact us at any time. We hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Night,
you.
everybody. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Have a good night and a great coming weekend.